break down some of those barriers, whatever it may be. And I just feel like for our culture here, the whole idea of, what am I going to do with my kids? What about I can't do this because, and one of those becauses is my family. Would you define what you were doing as church planting, or would you see it more as just straight discipleship and relationship building, evangelism? How would you kind of define what y'all's actual ministry was?
The first phase of that, it always is just friendship, getting to know people, and the longer you're in the country, the more you absorb. I mean, Barbara can certainly
speak to that as well.
Than we do, but then you begin to fit into the culture, and then you meet somebody, and sometimes he has a friend that comes and
just opens up these paths.
Yeah.
We saw lots of different people in our 36 years there, and to be willing to fit with them. Now that didn't mean we had missionaries who never really got the language. But were very effective. And they were effective because they still, could identify with the people, and the people recognized a sense of love and concern, even if the words weren't good. We had one guy whose wife interpreted. She'd come earlier. She was good in the language. He came when he was 40. He never learned the language, and she always interpreted his sermons for him. But he was very loved.
The Japanese people knew he loved them.
And so you need to learn, and you want to orient yourself to be part of their culture. That's one of the tensions between fellowshipping and being with missionaries and being with the Japanese, and you need a balance there.
And so, I'd just love to hear any further reflections y'all might have about that parenting process with the life that you've lived.
Where we were in Colombia, we were on what you call a plantel. And all the missionaries lived there, which is another subject we might want to talk about. The wonderful Christian people. And so our children had the advantage of lots of moms and dads, or they call them uncles and aunts. Right?
And the school was on the plantel that the kids went to. The school was on the plantel. We didn't have to send them away. That's so different from a lot of places where they have to do that at such a young age.
From your kids' standpoint, did you think that it was hard coming back into the USA after being in another country for a while?
They were so young when we had to come back. Our oldest was only 8.
Okay.
And our one that was sick had just turned 1.
Okay.
And so I don't know how. I'm sure it was. This would be something I ought to sit down and ask them sometime. I never have. How difficult was it? What do you remember
about transitioning
at
back
that young age? And I'm sure it was difficult from the standpoint of having to make friends.
You mentioned being pregnant and being on the mission field. And one of the things that emerges as I'm doing these, I love asking people about their family and the dynamics of all of that. So tell me a little bit about that. What would you speak to somebody that's saying, well, what about my family?
Go ahead, Mom.
Well, I think when we first went to the field that the pendulum was kind of over here, where your kids, if it was you couldn't teach them at home, then they went off to MK school,
a boarding school,
and we had colleagues who did that. And actually, when we were leaving Morocco, I was considering our son was born there when we got there, so he would be 5 when we came back, 6 when we would come back, thinking we would come back to Morocco, that there was a missionary school, which would have been 4 hours by train. And so that was what I was considering.
Well, I think the most difficult situation we faced with our children was when I was a Spanish pastor in Camden, New Jersey. Camden, New Jersey is like a bummed out city. Urban renewal swept away whole blocks of the city. And there were just rows and rows of abandoned houses and so on. And we moved into the middle of that.
Abandoned houses.
And I pastored 2 Spanish churches. Our son got beat up in high school by Negro kids that said, "This is our turf. This is our turf. Yeah, you can't be here." And so that was a tough experience.
Probably that's the only
So
way.
after we moved to Lancaster, life got a little easier for our children.
then we went to France, and so as God led, we put them in the French school system, which was a wonderful place to raise your children. They're big on family. I mean, God led in that. I sort of feel like the pendulum is on the other side, so that the children now are like, if it's not perfect, we go home.
The children get new questions. They look at life differently. And our son, though he's not religiously attached, let us say, at this point, and has his questions, he is very much concerned about what happens in the third world and what the U.S., whether in politics and social action or whatever, does in the third world. He's all up in arms.
There's an awareness.
Because he understands questions that others don't. So there are values and
challenges,
disvalues, problems also. I mean, we're concerned about him, of course, but we are thankful for the good he is in his own world and his own context.